Hello, I'm Shalmali Guttal, and I'm with Focus on the Global South. Everywhere in the world, certain types of infrastructure are very important for enabling people to have better lives. For example, roads, railways, ports, and transportation are important for people to be able to access health services, schools, courts, government offices, markets, and so on. Water and sanitation infrastructure are essential for public health. Electricity is needed for markets to function, for educational facilities, for hospitals and clinics, for industry, for railways, and so on. Of course, infrastructure in and of itself doesn't do the job. These services actually have to exist and be accessible to everybody in terms of cost, in terms of eligibility, quality, distance, and so on. Now, some kinds of infrastructure have been and should remain public goods. They are essential for maintaining and enhancing life, society, and the economy. Building and maintaining essential infrastructure is expensive. Traditionally, the money for infrastructure projects and programs have come from the combinations of government allocations, which come from tax money, most direct and indirect taxes, from loans, from financial institutions, and from international aid. But in much of Asia, if we look at the past 2 decades, repeated financial crises, structural adjustment programs, the adoption of neoliberal policies, and also increased control by corporations in the economy, all these have made governments far less willing to uphold the public interest and to really put public financing into essential infrastructure as a public good. Now, here we have the role also of international financial institutions who see infrastructure development through the lens of economic growth and private investment. They use the argument of financing gaps. Here it's important to look at the role of international financial institutions in infrastructure financing. These financial institutions that we tend to call IFIs, they see infrastructure development through the lens of economic growth and private investment. Using the argument of financing gaps, they're pushing for greater involvement of commercial financing in infrastructure projects. However, the conditions by which this is being done completely undermine the public interest. The model for infrastructure financing that these financial institutions are pushing is public-private partnerships, PPPs. Now, PPPs have been around for a long time, but in the last 10, 15 years, these PPPs have taken on a sort of a new form, a new avatar. And in this new model, private companies are the kings in every way. They are enabled to recover their costs and their investments first through the levying of different types of charges. In this model of PPPs, the cross-subsidization that is necessary to ensure social economic quality. Here it's important to look at the role of international financial institutions in the financing of infrastructure. Now, these financial institutions tend to see infrastructure development through the lens of economic growth and private investment. Using the argument of financing gaps, they're pushing for greater involvement of commercial financing in infrastructure development. However, the conditions by which this is being done undermine the public interest. The model for infrastructure financing that these financial institutions are pushing is public-private partnerships, or what are commonly called PPPs. And in the PPP model that the financial institutions are pushing, private companies are able to recover their own investments first, through various charges. And in this model, the cross-subsidization that has been used in public financing of infrastructure, which allows for social economic equity and for poorer people and those who can't pay to be able to use these services, this kind of cross-subsidization is not possible. And equally important, the investment risks are borne not by these private companies, but by the government, which by extension means that the risk is borne by the public, that is all of us. Because where, after all, does the government get its money but from taxpayers? That's all of us. Now, physical infrastructure has also become a new assets class that's being packaged and sold to investors. So financial institutions are developing infrastructure financing markets, and they're pushing for policies, regulations, and financial market and banking reforms that support and they facilitate private sector involvement in infrastructure financing. New financial, credit, risk protection, and guarantee instruments are being developed to attract corporations towards infrastructure projects. Now, this is not to say that infrastructure projects should not be financed. Of course, they should be financed. But infrastructure in and of itself is not the be-all and end-all of what constitutes the public interest. In fact, the type of infrastructure financing we're seeing that's coming from the financial institutions through these public-private partnerships and their promotion of the ease of doing business, this type of financing is a perversion of public interest. Because this kind of financing does not cover the full costs of infrastructure projects. They don't cover the social, environmental costs. In fact, in the case of a financial crisis or a natural disaster, they don't even cover the full financial costs. And they make infrastructure itself a source of financial profit, rather than something that enhances, the quality of life for the majority. This is a very dangerous trend, this kind of financing of infrastructure projects. And I believe, and all of us in Focus believe, that this really must be opposed by all of us who are committed to protecting the public interest.